What's going on here at Farhoff is a beautiful thing. It's really going to be beneficial to our culture. It's going to entertain people, and it's going to educate people, and it's going to preserve a great part of American musical history. And I'm just honored to be a small part of it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon. We are excited to have you here. It is truly my pleasure to introduce this next wonderful group of speakers. Dina McLeod is the owner and partner of the Museum Collective and partner of Folk American Roots Hall of Fame in Boston. Noel Paul Stookey has been altering both musical and ethical landscapes of this country and the world for decades as Paul of the legendary Peter, Paul, and Mary, and as an independent musician who passionately believes in bringing in the spiritual into the daily practice of life. It is truly my pleasure to introduce our first keynote presentation of this year's conference, Alchemy Through the Years. Please welcome Dina and Noel.
A keynote delivered from a comfortable chair to a group of semi-old fogies. And what do they call young women of age? Fogettes?
Amazing.
Do we all know Dina?
Hi, folks, and welcome to Folk Alliance, Noel.
That's right. I'm an FT. I am. I'm a first-timer. I don't know why I haven't been here before. I've been to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come. But not to an FAI. So really lovely to be here.
And you apparently brought a friend beside you.
Yeah, this is Manny. I don't know how many of you have been to the Farhoff booth, but I'm just going to play a little bit of him. That. Yeah, there's a luthier in upstate New York by the name of David LaPlante who has done work for both Peter's guitar and my guitars. They, as many of you know, when you're on the road, your instruments can take a beating, and ours certainly have over the years. Over the years. So tell us about the title of today's get-together, The Alchemy of Folk. What did you have in mind here?
Okay, so I'm supposed to be asking the questions.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good thing it's built ruggedly.
Now, Noel, you're going to be offering folks the chance to get up close and personal with this, right? With your instrument?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Sorry, I thought we talked about it.
Yeah, at the Farhoff booth, which is somewhere out there, there's a video playing. And I will be glad to meet with anybody who understands the wisdom of starting off their life with a 4-string instrument like a ukulele, which is the way I began. The interesting thing about this is that we've always loved the sound of a 12-string, and this is double-strung, and the bottom 2 strings are tuned in octaves, so it's almost like having 8 strings on an instrument. That's part of the warmth and the fun of playing it. And gee whiz, people who can finger pick it are just amazed at how easy it is to play. And the reason I can talk about it is because it's not for sale. Perhaps someday it'll be manufactured, but right now it's just the one of a kind. But I'd be glad to share it with you, anybody who wants to come out to the booth at 3 o'clock or so. But seriously, Dina, let's talk about the alchemy of folk. And I have some reference. I couldn't help myself. When you're supposed to speak to a bunch of people about something that you've lived rather than know anything about. Let's see if I got it here. Oh, yeah. This blew my mind. I went online, and because I was kind of tracing the evolution in my mind, of popular music. I was a young kid in Michigan with a rhythm and blues band called the Birds of Paradise, which had its own theme song, and I thought we were pretty hot stuff. And then I realized how much I was borrowing from what I was hearing from rhythm and blues being played. Grew up near Pontiac, Michigan, where I collected a lot of records from a store that had a crotch-high patrol dog that walked down the aisles in case you wanted to lift something. And so I listened to a lot of radio, which was doo-wop in the early 50s, but I got to thinking, where did folk happen? Where was Woody? Was he hiding? Was he, we were talking about quotes earlier today. One of Woody's quotes blew me away, which was, anybody that writes a song that uses more than 2 chords is just showing off.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I wanted to read you this because in 1940, the predominant airplay, and of course that was radio, not streaming, right, was Tommy Dorsey, Artie Shaw. 41 was Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, Sammy Kaye, Jimmy Dorsey. 42, the only singer to have a #1 was Bing Crosby. 43, the song spinners were coming in on a wing and a prayer, because now we're talking about how the Second World War impacted some of the lyric writing and some of the music. That's actually, to my mind, kind of the beginning of the arrival of folk music, or music of common and contemporary concern in the popular music scene. Then 1944, 10 of the top 14 #1s were vocals, 5 of them by Crosby. 1945, the bands resurged slightly. 1946, ditto. And in 1947, and this is going to blow your minds, Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land goes to #8 in the country. Isn't that something? I think that's beautiful. Then, let's see, Woody, This Land Is Your Land. Yeah, that was a 100 Songs video. It was in 1951. Then the Weavers have the hit song with So Long It's Been Good to Know You. And then comes the mid-50s and a little bit of, competition from Elvis. And certainly doo-wop was still alive. But then the seeds of contemporary folk music began to arrive. And the need and the thirst for a commonality of concern. And, as I think of Peter, Mary, and I in Greenwich Village in the early 60s, I have to plead, I was really a latecomer, as I think you probably are figuring out now, to folk music's conscience. Peter and Mary were, New Yorkers. Peter even taught a course called Romp and Stomp at Cornell, which was an introduction of many people to folk music and its roots. Mary was part of a hard left political group that marched against the execution of the Rosenbergs in Washington, so she was quite active. And here comes this kid with this rock and roll band coming into Greenwich Village who loved Jonathan Winters and did sound effects all the time. But there is something so damned attractive about living closer to the reason for your being. And that thirst, the hunger, supersedes the entertainment value of what it is that you do. And I find myself now at really a ripe old age, even if I had dyslexia, I'd still be 68. which is quite old, I'll wait for that to sink in. But at that age, you look back at a history of where pop music has gone and lament, to a certain extent, the loss of the acoustic approach to music, that's the loss of availability. You have to come to a place like Kansas City and hang out with 5,000 of your closest friends in order to hear that music again. But if we're talking about alchemy, and we're talking about the mixing together of genres, folk music's impact has not gone away. What was it? This quote drives my partner, Peter Yarrow, crazy. But Louis Armstrong said, and I'll try to deliver it with his panache, "Hey man, everything's folk music. You never heard a horse sing, did you?" I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, Peter thought that was a little too generalized, because he loved the specificity and the care and the urgency of people like Pete and the Weavers and Josh White and Woody, in retrospect. And somehow it felt to demean it by including all of music, because folk music was supposed to be focused on the common concern. Well, let me tell you, from this 86-year-old perspective, we all go through a period of growing up, don't we? I mean, what was the first song you appreciated? I'm sure it wasn't "This Land Is Your Land" even. I'm sure it was "Mary Had a Little Lamb, Little Lamb." Sing it again, Mommy, sing it again. Music has a way of unlocking that kind of togetherness and family within us that really does supersede the lyric content. But addressing the lyric content, which is really what I think establishes folk music as a distinctly different kind of animal in this zoo of musical opportunity. There is a period of time that I was hinting at called self-realization. And to a large extent, I think that's what we have to, maybe some of us would say, suffer through. But that's what we're hearing in a lot of music. I mean, when you're a teenager, you want to write about your angst. You don't want to write about the fact that some people are starving on the other side of town. You want to write about, she left me. Just because I have pimples doesn't mean I'm not beautiful. Actually, that's too much like folk music. But a lot of what we hear today is from an artist, from a writer who wants to establish a sense of self. And that is the beginning, actually, of caring. You have to kind of know who you are in order to move into an area where you can care for others. And so it is with a really broad embrace at my age now that I listen to rap with different ears. I'm still learning about it, but the urgency with which it first arrived, say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was coupled with a severe commentary on disenfranchisement by the black community. So naturally, there was a little bit of anger and a little bit of angst going on. But over the years, you listen to Saul Paul now, you listen to Common, they are reaching for a higher goal. They are taking us with them in their particular vernacular. So my sense of what folk music is that authenticity is in the intention. If you are intent to say something, then you're being true to it. You're being authentic. You are committed to a principle. And that is why, in a sense, we're here. I mean, sure, there are people who can play really fast on banjo, can play guitar, can play whistle, dulcimer, fiddle. And the intensity with which they play is sometimes measurable. But in terms of the lyric content of the material, I think the place to really start our appreciation is to accept the fact that those who have created it care a great deal about what it is that they're doing. It's not just to show off. That stopped when you were 14 at your mom's bridge parties or wherever you first got your chance, or the teenage talent show. And it's now an opportunity to share with the community some real concerns about the world in which we live. Okay.
Okay, so you answered my first question without me asking it. Yeah.
About what was the first question?
Yeah, you answered my first question without me having to actually ask it, so that was pretty good. Nicely done. And I will mention, from my perspective, in regard to the alchemy of folk, I've been coming to Folk Alliance conferences for 20-some years. Just taking the awards event as an example, the diversity, the inclusiveness, the change that has happened during that time is incredible, and it was needed, and I absolutely celebrate this organization and its leadership for broadening the horizons and being a welcoming place for all communities to gather.
Yeah.
So in your incredible career, you were present and witness to some amazing events. What one event stands out in your mind that you as a solo artist or as part of Peter, Paul, and Mary were present for that really holds a special place in your heart?
Excuse me, there are competing visions. Certainly, one cannot easily dismiss standing in front of 250,000 people at the Lincoln Memorial and singing, Blowing in the Wind, or If I Had a Hammer, and being joined in voice by so many people proclaiming the injustice of inequality. But honestly, I wrote a song a while ago called El Salvador. I wrote it because Jim Wallace, who's, by the way, got a great new book out if you get a chance to look at it. It's called, The White Gospel of Politics or something. It's, it's an expose of the evangelical nationalism that's happening in the country. But they devoted an entire article of Sojourners magazine to the crisis in El Salvador and also Nicaragua. But I was so moved by his words that I almost literally borrowed them to write a song in El Salvador. This is by way of answering moving moments. So the song was so well received, so timely, and so pertinent that Peter, Mary, and I actually went, the State Department, to El Salvador and sang refugee camps. And I remember singing at a particular church where a priest thanked me for being there. Peter and Mary were somewhere else on that particular day, held up a white flower and said, I am giving this to Noel so that he can take it back to his government, and asked them not to pour our blood on it. I mean, so, when music crosses over into real life, it's hard to talk, it's hard to sing sometimes, but that truly was one of the most moving moments in the connection with Peter and Mary, and we've had some wonderful times. I mean, when we were just beginning. I mean, we didn't know what an appetite there was for folk music when it began. I mean, I'm sure in Greenwich Village, but that was a very small group of people. Very close. I mean, people would come down from the Bronx dressed in shower clogs, trying to pretend that they were hippies, in the early '60s. But to pull off to the side of the road just outside of San Francisco because somebody, for the first time in our lives, was playing Lemon Tree on the radio was so freaky. And and we were so nervous. We were headed for a disc jockey who had played that for his office. And when we got out of the elevator, Peter was so nervous that he knocked over one of the cuspidors with all the sand on it, right? As the owner of the station and the disc jockey are walking out the door. But God bless Don Graham, who was our promotion guy. He stepped right there and kicked it all the way down the hall towards them. And when he got there, said, "We're Peter, Paul, and Mary. Is there anything else you need cleaned up?"
Oh, that's
my.
great.
So the memories are boundless. Some of them are funnier than usual.
So you, as part of Peter, Paul, and Mary, the group has influenced and inspired millions of people. I mean, you and so many other artists have created what has become a universal playlist in all of our minds. But your work continues through your organization, Music to Life. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Well, yes, I sort of touched on it. Music to Life is an organization that had modest beginnings at the Kerrville Folk Festival and really was responsible for sponsoring song contests. We invited as many artists who wanted to submit songs to a panel that included Tom Paxton. Hey, Tom. That was lovely. That song session you did at 1 o'clock, that was just great. Janice Ian, Cheryl Wheeler. Anyway, I'm sure I'm leaving out some. Tom Chapin, lots of folks. But what Music to Life did at that point was to recognize the fact that there were still people writing contemporarily about things that are of community concern. And we awarded, based on the judgment of this panel, 10 slots at the Kerrville Folk Festival. When you think about it, it's kind of, I don't know, callous almost, because as any performer knows, you'd like to be able to build a little bit of a platform as you're singing to somebody, but this was da 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 da, and now number one. This is a song about the crowding of cities, da 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 da, and now a song about water purity, da 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 da. But it had a certain power to it. There was an audience at Kerrville that understood that this was the beginning of a new remnant of cloth being woven into our conversation. And though it was humble here in Kerrville, it was nonetheless important. Well, Music to Life over a period of time, I think we had, my daughter Liz is here. Was it 4 albums we did? 4 or 5 albums over a period of maybe 10 years, featuring these artists. And Liz was struck by, and I didn't hear these conversations the way she heard them. Perhaps the younger generation can listen better than we can at an older age, but she said, "Dad, I'm meeting these artists who want to take the music into the community, not for a rubber chicken benefit dinner. They want to take it into the community because it's going to make a difference in the lives of the people that they're singing about. In some instances, it's actual songwriting, where in the case of a prison ministry, it's not really a ministry, but a prison calling, Songs are created of whole cloth, just like Tom did earlier in his songwriting class, where people volunteer those things that are most important to them. And it's like a huge psychological lift to be able to talk about those things that matter to you, particularly in some of these less socially acceptable circumstances. Well, to cut to the chase, Music to Life now has impressed enough people to mentor these artists in how to seek support from their own communities. The program it's just musictolife.org. If you're curious beyond me talking about it, and I hope that you are. Received a $500,000 grant from the Mellon Foundation, and Liz is well on the way of making it truly a national phenomenon. And I'm so proud, to watch the trajectory of her leadership and her authorship of this particular function of Music to Life. So do check it out.
It is an amazing organization. And I fortunately get to serve on the board of Music to Life, so I love doing that. It's a beautiful mission. It's a beautiful vision. Unfortunately, we only had 30 minutes to chat, and so I think we have to wrap up pretty quickly. Okay. But for those of you who are here, we can continue the conversation tomorrow at noon because Noel is on my Farhoff panel. So you can come and join us and some other guests there. We look forward to that. And since you mentioned Woody and This Land, tomorrow is This Land's anniversary. So, in case you all want to sing.
And I said, I asked her, how does she know that? She says, Woody dated everything. They can even tell from the type of paper, the number of punch holes, and the color of the ink, where he was and when he wrote it. Isn't that something?
Yep, he was pretty amazing. Now, you are at a folk gathering. We're here as community. It just seems like we should have some kind of a closing song.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you should lead it instead of me. I'm just saying.
No, I had a thought about that, Dina. I would like us to do a song that we've never done before. I'm going to give you a tone, and you're going to sing that tone. And then some of you are going to get braver than others, and you're going to add a harmony to that. What gave you the right to do that? It's because you're a folkie. That's what happens. So that's going to be our concluding tune. We'll see where it goes. I got no idea. But here's the tone. In the back, come on. Thank you. Go in peace.
Thank you all so much for being here. Noel Paul Stookey.
turned out. I'm working.